When the princess threw wine in my face for the third day in a row, and then summoned me to her private chambers, I knew exactly what was coming: execution. Probably painful, definitely deserved for whatever crime my incorrect bow had committed 3 days ago. I stood in front of Princess Lysara's door, hands shaking. My aide had turned pale when she delivered the summons. His grip on my shoulder had been tight and trembling, as if he thought I would bolt at any moment. He spoke softly, but clearly. "It was an honor serving with you, sir." His words didn't bring me comfort. The Vel'Kari palace corridors were eerily quiet, almost empty except for the occasional guard or servant who hurried by without so much as a glance in my direction. I walked steadily forward, each step heavier than the last. The air grew colder and more oppressive with every footstep. As I approached her chamber door, it seemed to loom larger before me. I knocked softly on the thick wooden surface. My knuckles echoed off the hard wood. A moment passed where my heart pounded so loudly in my chest that I thought she might hear it. Her voice sliced through the silence. "Enter." The door opened inward with a quiet creak, revealing Princess Lysara standing just inside her chambers. She was an imposing figure, tall and regal, with luminous gold skin and fierce amber eyes. A single strand of jet black hair slipped over one shoulder. She wore a complex gown adorned with intricate gold patterns that shimmered under the light of floating candles. She stood aside as I entered, but didn't offer any welcoming gesture or word. The door closed softly behind me, sealing my fate, or what I assumed was my impending death sentence. Princess Lysara stepped closer until she towered above me. Her eyes seemed to bore into mine with a mixture of amusement and frustration. "Human," she began without preamble, her voice low but clear enough for only us to hear. "You have been here 3 days." I nodded once, trying not to let my fear show too much. "You made an error during your initial greeting." She paused as if waiting for me to respond or protest. When I remained silent, she continued, a bow that was incorrect in form and intent. Again, I said nothing. What could I say? My mistake had been clear from the moment it happened. There were no excuses left. "You have apologized each day." Her tone shifted slightly, almost sympathetic. "And yet," she added with a sharp edge to her voice now, "you do not understand why you continue this behavior." I swallowed hard and looked up at her. My apology was genuine. I had insulted her in the worst possible way by bowing improperly during a formal introduction. But what did that have to do with anything beyond the courtly norms? And yet every time she threw wine or publicly berated me, it only made things worse. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly before softening again, as though understanding my confusion better than I could express it myself. "Why," Princess Lysara said finally, her voice dropping even lower now to a near whisper, "do you keep apologizing?" She leaned in closer, still close enough that if she wanted to, her lips could have brushed mine without effort. My heart skipped several beats at the proximity and the sheer intimacy of this moment. "Stop," she whispered again, firmly but softly, almost kindly, despite everything else between us these past few days. Apologizing. Her words left me more confused than ever before. They seemed to carry some deeper meaning I wasn't catching. Why would apologizing for a cultural faux pas lead her to such intense reactions? She stepped back as quickly as she had moved in, placing an obvious distance between us. Once again coldness settled into place on her face like ice over water. "Do not misunderstand me," Lysara continued sternly, then with finality. "This conversation has ended." I stood there for a long moment after the door snapped closed behind me, wondering if I'd just been given some cryptic clue or sentenced to death by omission instead of words. But one thing was clear: Princess Lysara's actions and her baffling questions had left my mind reeling far more than any other possible fate could have. What did it all mean? The grand chamber of Princess Lysara Vel'Kari was a blend of opulence and mystery, its walls adorned with tapestries that seemed to whisper ancient secrets. Silk curtains swayed gently in the soft breeze from an open window, casting intricate shadows across the room. A bed large enough for 10 lay at one end, but David's eyes did not rest on it. He was too focused on the woman standing by the windowsill. Princess Lysara turned to face him as moonlight bathed her in a silvery glow. Her appearance made David's heart race with fear and an inexplicable mix of awe. He quickly knelt, his head lowered respectfully, but nervously towards the ground. "Your Highness," he stammered, "I await your judgment." The silence that followed felt like an eternity, until soft footsteps approached him from behind. His heartbeat thundered in his ears as she stopped right before him. "Look at me," Lysara commanded gently yet firmly. David lifted his gaze to meet hers for the first time without bowing. Her face was inches away, but her expression remained unreadable. Her eyes searched his with a piercing intensity that made it hard for David to look away. "Do you know why I have been angry with you?" she asked. David's mind scrambled in panic and confusion. "The bow," he stammered. 32 degrees instead of 30, she interrupted him sharply, her voice low but full of exasperation mixed with amusement. "I do not care about the bow." He blinked rapidly, his brain struggling to process her words against what everyone had taught him regarding Vel'Kari customs and etiquette. I don't understand," he admitted finally. Lysara stepped closer until she towered over him again. Her eyes softened as if pitying someone who couldn't comprehend something crucially important. "I do not care about the bow, you absolute fool." She paused, then tilted her head slightly to study his confused face more closely. "Everyone in my court has known for 3 days that I want no desires on my own," she explained patiently but with a hint of frustration. David's mind raced, trying to grasp this new information as Lysara continued. "In Vel'Kari culture," she said quietly yet clearly enough so he could hear every word, "public anger towards someone is romantic interest." His eyes widened in disbelief. "But you threw wine at me 3 times. She smiled, thinner radiant transformation that seemed to light up the whole room briefly before fading back into a more serious expression as she leaned closer still until her lips brushed his ear softly. "The wine throwing, that was a marriage proposal," Lysara whispered, her voice full of amusement. "Very aggressive and forward by our customs. My advisors were scandalized." David's mouth hung open slightly as he processed this revelation. He could smell the faint scent of expensive floral perfume emanating from hair. It reminded him vaguely of orchids, but richer, more complex. She stepped back then with a small laugh that rang clear in the chamber's still air. "Do you understand now?" 1,000 thoughts and emotions swirled within David: relief, confusion, awe. He couldn't think straight enough to form words yet as Lysara tilted her head at him expectantly. "Your Highness," he finally managed after swallowing hard against his nerves, if that was a proposal, then I don't understand why you've been so aggressive." Lysara's eyes softened further, but there was still an undercurrent of amusement in them. "You are from another planet where such things work differently," she said kindly yet sternly. David's mind raced to catch up, his heart pounding now for a different reason entirely than before as he realized the extent of Lysara's frustration with him these past few days. "Princess," he stammered again, gathering himself, "I am deeply sorry. I did not know." A small nod from her seemed to indicate she accepted that explanation, if only because it was all there could be for now. "You should learn our ways better next time," Lysara suggested gently, though there was still a playful edge in her tone. David nodded fervently. "I will, thank you, Your Highness." For the first time since entering this place of power and mystery, David felt less like he was facing certain doom than hopeful for something entirely new and unexpected. David's voice finally worked after a moment of stunned silence, cracking as he tried to form words around his disbelief. "You want me?" Lysara rolled her eyes in exasperation, but amusement flickered across her face despite the frustration evident there. "Obviously," she said with exaggerated patience. "I have been throwing wine at you for 3 days. Keep up." David's legs felt weak beneath him as reality dawned on him like a splash of cold water. He slid down the wall until he was sitting, his back against it, and knees drawn to his chest. It seemed impossible, but inescapable. The princess of the Vel'Kari Empire had been throwing wine at him for 3 days, a bizarre alien courtship ritual that looked and felt like torture. He started laughing uncontrollably then, the absurdity overwhelming him. He couldn't stop as tears welled up from somewhere deep within his chest, laughter laced with relief and disbelief. It was utterly insane, but also exhilarating in a way he hadn't expected at all. Lysara's expression shifted instantly from amusement to concern. She frowned deeply, her voice sharp with worry. "Are you malfunctioning?" David gasped between fits of laughter. "In my culture, throwing wine at someone means you hate them." Her eyes widened as realization hit her fully. "What?" He nodded vigorously through his chuckles. "I thought you wanted me dead. For 3 days, I have been writing goodbye letters." Lysara's hand flew to cover her mouth. In mortified shock, embarrassment flushed her gold skin, a deep shade of crimson that almost seemed to glow under the chamber lights. "You thought I was threatening you," he wheezed between gasps for breath. "You called me a child and a peasant in public." Her eyes softened as she understood fully. Nosh sat down next to him on the floor, princess-like and utterly human for just this moment. Her voice low but earnest. "Those are compliments. Children are honest. Peasants work hard." They sat in silence for a long minute or so, then, each lost in their own thoughts, while trying desperately not to laugh again at the sheer absurdity of it all. Then Lysara started laughing too, a soft sound that gradually grew louder and more uncontrollable, until they were both leaning against each other from sheer hilarity. It was such an unexpected turn. Who would have thought a diplomatic blunder could lead to something so far beyond comprehension? The laughter died away slowly, as David's breath finally caught, his heart still racing, but now for reasons entirely different than before. "I need some time just processing," he said with half a smile. Lysara nodded understandingly and stood up, offering him her hand to help rise when she noticed how shaky he looked after the ordeal. Just as David managed to stand straight again, the door burst open without warning or announcement. A figure charged in, its purple skin nearly matching Duke Vel'Kari's face, which was contorted with rage. "This is outrageous!" he roared at them both before his eyes landed solely on Lysara. David's breath caught as he saw the look of fierce determination and unyielding authority that crossed her features in an instant. She stood tall, every bit the regal princess she had been moments ago, but now with a cold clarity to match Vel'Kari's fiery temper. "You are listening at my door?" The Duke ignored the question. His words came out as harshly as they did hastily. "You cannot marry a human. I have waited decades for your favor. Choose a proper Vel'Kari mate." Lysara's voice dropped to an icy tone that cut through even Vel'Kari's fury like liquid nitrogen. "You presume to tell me who to choose?" The Duke realized his mistake, but was too late in correcting himself. Your Highness, I only meant," she interrupted him firmly. "This human showed more dignity under 3 days of undeserved humiliation than you have shown in 30 years of groveling." She turned sharply towards the guards standing at attention behind Vel'Kari, and snapped orders without looking away from either David or Duke. "Guards, remove the Duke. He will not attend the wedding." The room fell silent again as Vel'Kari was dragged out screaming protests, his purple skin turning a deeper shade of red with rage that could scarcely be contained. Once the door closed behind him, and silence filled their chamber once more, Lysara turned back to David, who still stood near where she had helped pull him up. She looked almost sheepish now for interrupting what must have been an important conversation between them, but also very clear about one thing. "So," she began softly, then with a smile that reached her eyes and softened the edges of her otherwise regal appearance, "will you marry me? Now that you understand I am not trying to kill you?" David's heart fluttered wildly in his chest as he looked into Lysara's warm amber gaze. All thoughts of diplomatic blunders or royal protocols had faded away now. Only this moment mattered, this strange but incredible chance at something new and unexpected. He swallowed hard before nodding firmly, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Yes, princess." And with that, the door opened again to let in guards carrying documents and scrolls, their wedding preparations already underway. Despite everything, David stood slowly, his mind racing as Lysara's last words hung in the air between them. For a moment, He could hardly believe what had just transpired. A royal princess of an alien empire had proposed to him by throwing wine at him for 3 days straight. He looked around the chamber once more before turning back to her. "You are proposing marriage?" His voice was barely above a whisper, still tinged with disbelief and a hint of lingering nervousness. Lysara's gaze softened as she watched his reaction. She took a deep breath and said quietly, "I understand if you want to leave. By your culture's standards, I treated you terribly. I humiliated you publicly." I did not explain. Her words reached him with unexpected clarity, cutting through the fog of confusion that had clouded his mind for days. He saw past her regal appearance and into a woman who was now uncertain and nervous, facing a potential rejection from someone she thought she understood but didn't at all. David's eyes locked onto hers, studying every detail, the warmth in her gold skin, the concern in her amber eyes. "In my culture," he began slowly, his voice steady, as he found the courage to speak again, "if someone throws wine at you, you are supposed to ask them to dinner first." Lysara blinked, surprised by his words but also intrigued. She tilted her head slightly, trying to understand. "Get to know each other," David continued softly. "Talk and learn about one another before we talk marriage." He smiled faintly as he saw a glimmer of hope in Lysara's eyes, a flicker of understanding beginning to take root. She paused for a moment, her face lighting up with recognition. "Dinner?" David nodded, feeling the tension gradually ease from his shoulders. His suit was ruined beyond repair after days of public humiliations. It didn't matter now what he wore at dinner. "It is traditional," he said gently. "Maybe without the wine throwing." Lysara's face broke into a wide smile. She clasped her hands together in front of her, her gold skin glowing with excitement and relief. "Dinner, yes." Her voice was light, but also filled with resolve. "What do humans do at dinner?" she asked curiously, clearly wanting to understand more about his culture. David's heart swelled with the sudden warmth that spread through him as he offered her his hand. He felt honored by this moment of connection across their vast cultural divide. "Talk," he said simply and sincerely. "Learn about each other." She took his hand, her skin warm against his palm. The realization dawned on both of them simultaneously. It was a beginning that they were ready for. "And if we are compatible?" she asked with a hint of anticipation in her voice. He grinned broadly, feeling the weight lift off him as all uncertainty slipped away. "Then we discussed the marriage proposal you apparently made 3 days ago." 1 year later, the wedding ceremony combined human and Vel'Kari traditions into one beautiful amalgamation. It was already legend by this point. Story of a clueless diplomat who misunderstood courtship signals, leading to an unexpected engagement that captivated both planets. During their vows, the ritual included a moment where Lysara publicly declared anger at David. She scolded him in full regal form for his diplomatic blunder from days before. "You did not understand our customs and treated me with disrespect." David managed not to apologize. Instead, he looked into her eyes and smiled warmly. The court laughed kindly then, everyone knowing the story now. They had witnessed first and how a simple misunderstanding could lead to something so much more meaningful. Afterwards, as they walked through the grand halls of Vel'Kari's palace hand in hand, Lysara leaned close to whisper into his ear, "No regrets." David held her closer and kissed the top of her head softly. "Only that I apologized 17 times for you flirting with me." She laughed lightly against him, shaking her head playfully. 18. She reminded him fondly. He grinned down at her as he nuzzled his nose into her hair. "Then I have 18 apologies to make up for." Lysara smiled back, looking up at him with warm eyes filled with affection and admiration. "You have a lifetime," she whispered softly. David kissed her again lightly on the forehead, before pulling away just enough so that he could gaze deeply into those amber depths of hers. "Start now." And indeed they did, beginning their life together, not just as diplomat and princess, but also as two people who had crossed cultural divides to find a love beyond comprehension.